All right, so today we're diving deep into cybersecurity.
Ooh, exciting.
It is, it is. We're going to be looking specifically at incident threat detection and response.
Yep.
Especially with businesses these days,
Right.
moving more and more of their operations to the cloud.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Huge, huge. So I'm kind of curious, like when we say incident threat detection and response,
Right.
what exactly are we talking about?
Well, you got to think about it like you have systems in place that are constantly monitoring any signs of suspicious activity.
Right.
Like imagine someone trying to hack into your network.
Right.
Or, you get a piece of malware that's trying to sneak in.
So it's not just waiting until after the attack.
No.
It's like trying to be proactive.
Exactly.
And find it before it becomes a problem.
Yeah, the detection part is all about recognizing those early warning signs.
Right.
And then the response is all about having a plan
Okay.
to quickly contain and mitigate that threat.
Now, looking through these sources, I saw a bunch of different types of threats that businesses are facing these days.
Oh yeah, there's a ton.
What were some of the ones that really stood out to you?
Well, aside from the obvious ones like malware and phishing attacks,
Right.
one of the sources really highlighted insider threats.
Oh, wow.
And those are often way harder to detect
I bet.
because the attacker's already inside the organization.
Yeah, they already have access.
Exactly. They might already have legitimate access to sensitive information.
That's scary. So how do these systems actually detect a potential threat?
That's a great question.
Is it like some super sophisticated AI watching every little thing we do?
Well, it's not quite that advanced, but it's getting there.
Okay.
The sources mentioned a variety of different tools, like there's intrusion detection and prevention systems
Okay.
that monitor network traffic for anything unusual.
Gotcha.
And then there's these things called SIEM platforms,
Okay.
which are basically like central hubs. They gather all the security data from everywhere,
Okay.
and then they use analytics
Right.
to look for any patterns or anomalies.
So it's not just about stopping any threat.
Right.
It's about figuring out
Yeah,
which ones are actually the biggest risk.
exactly. You got to prioritize.
I'm prioritizing.
It's like triage in a hospital.
Oh,
You
yeah.
need to quickly figure out what's going on and address the most critical things first.
Now, one of the sources also talked about forensic analysis
Right.
after an incident.
Absolutely.
Why is that so important?
Well, think of it like investigating a crime scene.
Right.
You don't just want to catch the bad guy.
Right.
You also want to understand how they got in, what
Yeah.
they did,
Right.
what vulnerabilities they might have exploited.
Okay.
So that helps you strengthen your defenses and prevent it from happening again.
So it's not just about cleaning up the mess.
No.
It's about learning from it
Exactly.
and actually improving things going forward.
And the source is really stressed, like
Yeah.
having a response plan,
Okay.
like a defined response plan
In place.
before an incident even occurs.
Right.
Like it's not about panicking when something goes wrong.
Right. Okay.
It's about being prepared.
Having that plan.
Exactly. Knowing exactly what steps to take.
So it's like a fire drill.
Exactly.
You don't want to wait until the fire to figure out how to use the fire extinguisher.
Exactly. Some organizations even run these simulated attacks.
Oh, wow.
Call them tabletop exercises,
Okay.
where they basically practice
Gotcha.
their response to different attack scenarios.
Okay, so let's say an incident does happen.
Right.
What are some of those immediate steps
Yeah.
to contain it?
Well, speed is key.
Okay.
You want to isolate those affected systems as quickly as possible
Mm-hmm.
to prevent the threat from spreading.
Right.
So that might involve disabling accounts, blocking IP addresses,
Okay.
maybe even taking entire servers offline.
So it's almost like a surgery.
Yeah.
You're cutting out the infected part before it can spread.
You got to contain it.
Okay.
But containment is only part of it.
Right.
You also need to mitigate the damage, right?
Okay.
Restore those affected services, recover any data you might have lost,
Right.
and then patch up any vulnerabilities that were exploited.
Makes sense. So we've talked a lot about the reactive side of things, but the sources also mention some proactive strategies
Oh, yeah.
to stay ahead of the curve.
For sure.
What are some of the kind of key approaches?
Well, one that's becoming really important is adaptive security.
Okay.
And that involves using technologies like machine learning
Okay.
to analyze patterns, identify anomalies, and respond to threats in real time.
So it's not just about those static rules.
Yes.
It's about having systems that can actually learn
Exactly.
as the threats evolve.
Right. So, for example, like a traditional security system
Okay.
might not detect a brand new type of malware.
Right, because it's never seen it before.
Exactly. It's never seen it before.
Yeah.
But a machine learning system can analyze the malware's behavior.
Right.
and flag it as suspicious,
Even though it doesn't match
even if it doesn't match.
the old rules.
Exactly. It's pretty cool stuff.
That's pretty impressive. What else is out there?
Another key strategy is automation.
Okay.
A lot of the tasks involved in incident response can be really time-consuming
Right, I bet.
and repetitive, and that can really slow things down
Right?
and increase the risk of human error.
Of course.
Automation tools can streamline these processes
Okay.
and ensure a much faster and more consistent response.
So it's like having a team of virtual robots working
Yeah,
right alongside your human experts.
Exactly.
Really?
Hey, don't underestimate the power of teamwork and communication.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity is not just an IT issue.
Right.
It's a business issue.
It affects everybody.
Everyone, from the CEO
Yeah.
to the frontline employees,
Right.
they all need to be aware of the risks
And know their role.
and understand their role in protecting the organization.
Now, speaking of the changing landscape, the sources really highlighted the cloud
Yes,
and its growing role in all of this.
absolutely.
It seems like the old ways of doing security just aren't enough anymore.
You got traditional methods just can't keep up with the cloud.
Right.
It presents unique challenges,
Yeah.
but also some exciting opportunities
Okay.
for enhancing security.
Well, I'm really curious to hear more about that.
We'll definitely delve into all of that after the break. So, we were talking about how the cloud is changing the game when it comes to, incident threat detection and response.
It really does feel like a whole new ballgame.
It is.
What are some of the challenges and opportunities that it brings?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is just the sheer complexity of these cloud environments.
Yeah.
We're not talking about a single contained network anymore.
Right.
It's this vast distributed landscape
Oh, I bet.
with, workloads and data constantly moving between different services and regions.
That sounds like a nightmare to secure.
It can be. It can be.
Yeah.
Those traditional security tools
Right.
that rely on static rules and network boundaries, they just can't keep up.
Right. They're outdated.
You need specialized solutions that provide visibility across your entire cloud infrastructure.
The sources mentioned this term, cloud native security analytics.
Right.
What is that?
Well, think of it as security analytics
Okay.
that's designed specifically for the cloud.
Gotcha.
These platforms can handle those massive amounts of data
Okay.
that cloud environments generate.
Right.
And they use those advanced techniques, like machine learning,
Yeah.
to detect really subtle patterns and anomalies that might indicate a threat.
So instead of just looking for known bad guys,
Right.
it's about identifying any kind of unusual behavior.
Exactly.
That could be a sign of something malicious.
Yeah, so imagine, for example,
Okay.
an employee suddenly starts accessing sensitive data that they've never touched before. Or maybe they're trying to download large amounts of data outside of normal business hours.
Right.
A human analyst might not even notice those subtle changes.
Right.
But a cloud-native security analytics platform
Yeah.
could pick up on those red flags and trigger an alert.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
It seems like those platforms could be really helpful in identifying insider threats,
Oh,
which
absolutely.
we talked about earlier.
Yeah, they can also be really effective at detecting those zero-day attacks.
Right.
Which exploit vulnerabilities that haven't even been discovered yet.
Right. Haven't even been patched.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Traditional security tools really struggle with those
We do.
because they rely on known signatures.
So cloud native security analytics sounds really powerful.
It
Is there any downsides?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is just managing the complexity.
Okay.
These platforms can be pretty sophisticated.
Right.
And they require specialized expertise to implement and operate effectively.
So you can't just plug it in and expect it to work.
No. It takes careful planning, integration with your existing systems,
Okay.
and ongoing monitoring and fine-tuning.
So the sources also mentioned incident orchestration and response automation.
Right.
Can you break that down?
Yeah, think of it as automating that incident response process
Okay.
as much as possible.
Okay.
Remember we talked about speed and efficiency?
Yeah, every second counts.
Exactly.
Sign you're dealing with a security breach.
Precisely. These incident orchestration and response automation platforms allow you to define these workflows
Okay.
and automate tasks like gathering evidence, analyzing logs, isolating infected systems, notifying stakeholders.
So it's like having a virtual incident response team
Yes,
working 24/7.
exactly. Following that predefined playbook
Right.
to contain that threat
And by automating those tasks, you're responding much faster.
way faster. And more consistently, you reduce the risk of human error.
Which is bound to happen in a high-pressure situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it seems like automation is becoming more and more important in cybersecurity.
It is.
Are there any downsides to that?
Well, there's always the risk of becoming too dependent on automation.
Right.
And, losing that human element.
Right.
You still need skilled security analysts.
Yeah, of course.
Who can understand the nuances of those threats.
Right.
Make judgment calls, and adapt to new situations that the automated systems might not be able to handle.
So it's all about that balance.
Exactly. It's not about replacing humans.
Right.
It's about using tech to augment those human capabilities.
And make them more efficient.
Exactly.
So we talked about some specific challenges and opportunities with cloud security.
Right.
Are there any broader takeaways?
I think one of the key takeaways is that cloud security is a shared responsibility.
Okay.
When you move your operations to the cloud, you're not just handing over security.
It's not just out of sight, out of mind.
No.
You can't just wash your hands of it.
The cloud provider is responsible for securing that underlying infrastructure.
Okay.
But you're still responsible for your own data applications user access.
So it's a partnership.
It is.
Yeah.
You need to understand those responsibilities.
Where they begin and end?
Exactly. And work closely with your cloud provider to make sure your security posture is aligned.
One thing that really struck me reading through these sources was the sheer volume of information
Oh, it's overwhelming.
that security teams have to deal with.
It is.
It's like they're constantly bombarded with these alerts and logs.
all the time.
How do they even know where to start?
Well, alert fatigue is a real problem in cybersecurity.
I bet.
If you're constantly getting hit with alerts,
Right.
it's easy to become desensitized.
And miss the important ones.
Exactly.
So how do you avoid that?
Well, that's where threat intelligence comes in,
Okay.
and prioritization.
Okay.
Threat intelligence feeds, they give you information about the latest threats,
Okay.
vulnerabilities, right?
Yeah.
So you can focus on those most critical issues,
Right.
and then prioritization tools help you separate the signal from the noise.
So you're not wasting time chasing false alarms.
Exactly.
It seems like the key is to be proactive and strategic
It is.
in your approach to security in the cloud.
You can't just sit back and wait for something bad to happen.
Right.
You got to actively identify those risks, implement the right controls, and continuously monitor and adapt your security posture.
I think a lot of people listening right now
Yeah.
might be feeling a bit overwhelmed.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. It is.
It's a complex and constantly evolving landscape.
Yeah, it's intimidating.
It can be, but you don't have to be a security expert
Right.
to protect yourself and your organization.
Okay.
There's lots of resources out there.
Great.
And even small changes can make a big difference.
Like what?
Well, things like using strong passwords,
Okay, that's easy.
enabling multi-factor authentication,
Right.
keeping your software up to date.
Being cautious about the links you click on
Yeah.
and the information you share online.
Right. So just being smart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Basic cyber hygiene.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
but there's still more to explore.
There is.
In the final part of our deep dive,
Yes.
we're going to look at some real-world examples and case studies
Okay.
that illustrate these concepts that we've discussed.
That's good.
And then we'll leave you with some thought-provoking questions
Great.
to ponder on your cybersecurity journey.
I like it.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the theory behind incident, threat detection, and response.
Right.
But I think it'd be helpful to see how these concepts actually play out in a real-world scenario.
Definitely.
Now, our sources didn't provide specific case studies, but I think we can create a hypothetical example based on what we've learned.
I think so too.
So let's imagine a company. They've, gone all in on the cloud.
So.
They've got their fancy cloud-native SAM platform in place.
Right. But are they really ready for a real attack?
That's the million-dollar question.
So let's say their CM flags some unusual activity.
Okay.
It's late in the evening.
Right.
And an employee, let's call her Sarah, is accessing a database she's never even touched before. And not only that, it's way outside of her normal working hours.
That's definitely suspicious.
So this is the kind of thing a human analyst might miss, right?
Potentially.
But the machine learning system picks it up.
Uh-huh.
What happens next?
Well, this is where their incident response plan should kick in.
Okay.
So ideally, they've defined, clear procedures for how to handle this kind of alert.
Right.
So the alert would probably go to their security operations center,
Okay.
and an analyst would start investigating.
So they wouldn't just immediately shut down Sarah's account?
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah.
A good incident response plan really emphasizes thorough investigation before taking any drastic action.
Makes sense.
So the analyst needs to gather more information
Right.
to figure out, is this a true positive or is this just a false alarm?
What would that investigation look like?
So they might check, Sarah's recent activity logs,
Okay.
look for other unusual patterns.
Right.
They might correlate that data with other security events that are happening, around the same time.
Okay, so like see if there's any connection there.
Exactly. Like, is there any weird network traffic, associated with Sarah's account?
So they're kind of putting all the pieces together.
Yeah, they're trying to get a complete picture.
Trying to make sense of it.
Exactly.
Now, what if, through their investigation, they confirm those initial suspicions?
All right. Then it's time for action.
What happens then?
So that's when those containment and mitigation steps come into play.
Okay.
They might temporarily disable Sarah's account,
Okay.
block any, suspicious IP addresses,
Right.
isolate any systems that seem to be affected just to prevent any further damage.
Right. Right.
So they're trying to stop the bleeding, so to speak.
Okay, so they've stopped the bleeding,
Uh-huh.
but now they need to figure out how this even happened in the first place.
Yeah, now it's time for the forensics.
So like a deep dive.
They need to figure out the root cause of the incident.
Okay.
Was it a phishing attack?
Right.
Was it a compromised credential?
Okay.
Was it a vulnerability in their cloud infrastructure?
Okay. And based on what they find.
Then they can start taking steps.
To fix it.
Exactly. Strengthen their defenses.
Right, to make sure it doesn't happen again.
And prevent those similar incidents from happening in the future.
I think this really illustrates why having a solid response plan is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's not about panicking, it's about knowing what to do.
It's about having that roadmap
Right.
for investigating, containing, and, learning from every incident.
So, we've talked about a lot of different pieces today.
We have.
From the initial threat detection, putting those response plans in place, doing that forensic analysis,
Right.
and all within this world of cloud computing.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts as we kind of wrap things up?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that cybersecurity it's an ongoing journey.
Right.
It's not a destination.
You can't just set it and forget it.
No.
You got to stay on top of it.
You got to constantly adapt and evolve
Right.
to keep pace with, the threat landscape.
It's a constant cat-mouse game.
It is.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive.
It has.
I think we've, learned a lot.
I hope so.
And I hope our listeners feel a little bit more equipped to navigate this complex world of cybersecurity.
Absolutely.
As always, knowledge is your best defense.
Stay safe out there.
And thanks for joining us.